Difficult women.
Hey.
Hi, girl.
Hey, girl.
Hey, girl. Hey.
Hey, girl. How's it doing?
So great. I'm Marie.
I'm Katie. This is a Difficult Women podcast. We're also one half of the... No, well, we're each one half.
We're just...
the comedy duo of Reformed Whores. What if we were just one half of Reformed Whores and the people didn't know for years there was two other girls that were also doing Reformed Whores somewhere else, and then we had to come with our forces combined.
We had that one video we made at the very beginning of our band.
Oh,
That's
yes.
like the most brilliant thing we've ever made. Remember? It's like we went back in time, you guys, in this video, and then we sang with our past selves in 4-part harmony.
Yep. And we tried it once live and it was like hard, so we gave up, which is really not a good lesson.
That's our MO though.
Because honestly, I have to say our MO is usually the opposite. We're like, we're gonna do this thing and make it work. But that one was especially hard. But I've always wanted to bring that back because that was such a fun idea.
It's so, yeah, we played the video live and then sang with our past selves.
You know what? That's
a goal.
Yeah, just keep your eye open for a upcoming show. That's all I'm going to say. With 4 whores.
With 4 whores.
The show's called 4 whores.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So what's up? What's new? Tell me.
Well,
New.
I have some very big news. I'm very excited. I got vaccinated. You're speaking to a vaccinated woman over here.
Oh my goodness. Well, you guys, hold on to your butts. I've been vaccinated as well.
This is extremely exciting.
Vaccinated whores.
We're one more step to being closer to being able to see each other again.
Oh my gosh. I know. I did buy my first plane ticket. I'm going to Charleston.
That's so awesome.
I thought about buying you a plane ticket to meet me down there because it's going to be
I've thought
weird.
about buying one to just show up. Be like, hi, I'm here.
But yes, no, tell me about your experience and I'll tell you about mine, because I think that everyone's having, everyone's getting it different ways.
Experiences.
Yes. So it's cool.
And I think that, I'm not one to do like a it's fine if you want to do this. I'm not one to do a vaccination selfie per se. So instead I will just relay you with my experience. First of all, I want to say I didn't neatly fit into a technical like reason to get one. So I'm exposed to people without masks at work in in an enclosed environment without a lot of like airflow. Generally felt pretty safe at work, but was like, it's always on our minds. Like, we're one sick person away from like blowing up the whole business. So like, that was something on my mind anyway. And more and more, people around me were getting vaccinated because like their BMI was, over 30, but they were clearly not that obese. But
I checked. I'm overweight. I'm not obese. So
yeah, me too. I'm overweight, but not obese.
It's the only time I've wanted to be.
This guy that I was like dating like a while ago, we were still friends and talking, and I ran into him and he was like, I'm thinking about getting the vaccine because I'm obese. And I was like, technically I was like, oh, you don't, that's crazy that you're obese. He's like, I know, it's crazy. He's like, you're probably obese. And I'm like, I'm not obese. He's like, just check. I bet you're obese. And I was like, ouch, like this kind of hurt my feelings. But, not that there's anything wrong with being obese. It's absolutely fine. But anyway, so people have been getting it for like, they're like technically very allowed to get it. But it was frustrating for me because I was like, I have so many reasons why I should be vaccinated right now, but I'm not neatly fitting into this thing. So as I was seeing other people getting it, I was like, let me just check out what the scene is in New York, like with the vaccination thing. And what I found was like, there's at any given moment in New York, there's a lot of available appointments. Mm-hmm. So I think we've definitely passed the point of like people that desperately need it. They've gotten it by now, Now we're into the like realm of like, oh, should I get it? Should I not get it? People are waiting till May 1st, which is great too, if you don't feel like you need it right away. But there's like this vaccine that I'm not sure, a lot of it's getting wasted. I was hearing news of, like nurses and stuff saying like, we're throwing some of this out. And like that to me is the worst thing that can happen. Mm-hmm. So I was getting more confident about like, I'm just going to show up. And if they kick me out, fine. Mm-hmm. Got an appointment. And I showed up. There was almost nobody there, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. New York City. They were very happy to see me. They didn't even ask why I was there. They were just like, come in, we want to shoot you.
Where'd you go?
I went to I went to the NYPD Community Center in Brooklyn. I got vaccinated by a police officer. Thank you very much. He was a big dude, and I don't think he really had a lot of experience with needles. So he sort of jabbed me with this giant needle. It was great. Whatever. I was very thankful. Didn't have any, you sit for 15 minutes, didn't have any adverse reaction there. My arm hurt, but that's whatever. And then about like 6 hours later, I started to feel a little bit like I was coming on down with the flu or something. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like I'm having, I guess this is the symptoms. Like this is like
and
a
what
possible
vaccine
reaction.
did you get?
I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So I got the 1-shot deal. Fast forward like 3 hours later, I was sicker than I've ever been in my entire life. Like 102 fever for just most of the rest of the day and the night. I got my vaccine at 8 a.m. So by like 2 p.m. I was starting to be sick. And then I was like very sick until like the next morning. And then I started feeling better. But very, very, very bad chills. Very like the fever, worst fever that I've ever had. I've never felt so sick in my life. I say all this to say, not to scare you from getting the vaccine. Most people I've heard, I have had one of the worst reactions that I've heard of anybody having. So your chances of having a big adverse reaction are very minimal. If you have a bad reaction, it means the vaccine is working. So it's a good sign. So don't be afraid of it if you do have, symptoms. One doctor on the internet recommended like to try not to take Tylenol or anything if you do get bad response, because that suppresses your immune system, and the idea is to get your immune system to do whatever. The second thing that occurred to me during all that was I was miserable for a few hours, right? Across the board, it's being said that even the worst symptoms of the vaccine are like a baby version of COVID. So I can't even imagine what it would be like to have like full-blown COVID. And makes you really grateful that, I dodged that bullet. So that's another reason you should get it immediately, because you do not want this thing. I promise you. It's not the flu. It's not, it's like the flu on crazy steroids. It's really terrifying. Thirdly, I want to mention, I want to remind people how this works. I was not infected with the virus. I was infected with, or not infected, I was injected with like, spike proteins or something to get my immune system to work. So all of my symptoms were my immune system's response. There was no illness in me. And it's and that is proven by the fact that I had 0 lung problems, no coughing, no, it was just immune system. So people that like freak out when they start to get sick, they're like, they injected me with the virus. It's not how that's working. And the proof is in the pudding that like I didn't have, no lung stuff. That's where the virus is. So I just kind of wanted to throw those things out. The other thing is, if you get COVID, you get it for at least 2 weeks. So you're suffering with that for at least 2 weeks. I was over it within 18 hours.
Right.
I'm totally fine. Look at me. I'm totally fine. Look at me. Do I look like I have COVID? No, I don't have COVID. So like what a miracle of science. I felt like I was on like the COVID simulation ride where you're like, try out COVID for like a few hours. Cause it was just like, oh my God. And I feel grateful that I had such a not a bad experience. It was a great experience, but such an intense response, because it's just a reminder for me, girl, you better keep wearing your mask at least for another 2. You know what I mean?
Do not want this thing.
Because I could still get it even though I've been vaccinated. I've only been vaccinated for a few days, so I have to keep being careful. And I don't want any. I would not wish this on your worst enemy. So that's my experience. I just wanted to share that with everybody. The other thing I just want to add is that if you live in New York City and you qualify and you're really, really desperate for a vaccine and you're having trouble getting an appointment, message us at Difficult Women and let's talk, because I know there were so many appointments, but it's the system is convoluted and it's difficult. So I would be very happy to help somebody in the New York City area who is really struggling to get an appointment.
Well, my situation was, I went last week to North Carolina, you guys. I got to see my nephews, my 2 little sweet baby angels, who I taught how to do the villain. So they did that my entire trip. It was amazing. But so on my way out of town, so there's in the paper. I don't know if you read the Tennessean, probably not. But
every morning.
how's Marie? How's that town? How's the state? But the outer cities are not using the vaccines. About 30% are actually being used because guess what? There are Trump supporters out there, then they're not getting vaccinated. So they did have a lot of extra appointments. And I do qualify high risk because of my high blood pressure.
Oh, good for you.
I know.
Such a weird thing.
Yeah, so taking it every day does matter, I guess. And being like, oh, it's high. Yeah. It's very high. So anyway, yeah, that's how I got in. But I made my appointment the day before because there were appointments available all day long. But so it was an hour and a half out of town. But that's where I was driving to North Carolina, so I was passing that town anyway. But on April 1st, I'll be able to go and get my second. So I got the Pfizer. And my arm hurt, for a hot second, but no
Did
side
you feel
effects or
anything like a little bit sick or no?
Not at all. And my
good.
parents had Pfizer and nothing happened. Both their arms hurt, but nothing like that. But I mean, I've heard it from Pfizer, I've heard it from Moderna, and I've heard it from Johnson & Johnson. So
yeah, I think it's normal to sometimes at one point in the middle of the night, I was feeling really bad. I got a little bit nervous because I was like, is this something like I'm at 102 right now? I should maybe be.
But you were aware that could happen. Because that's
my God, yes. It was more that I was like, I didn't expect it. No one was saying it was going to be that bad. Mm-hmm. So I was like, that's like interesting. So I was like Googling a little as I do. And I found a guy, a doctor who had been vaccinated and had also like an experience more like mine. His fever went up to 105, but he was like, that seems
the simulation ride is now taking off.
Really working for that guy. But he was saying the same thing I just said, which is just that like this is a great thing. This is an incredible thing.
That's nice.
So but just so if you do have crazy symptoms, it's totally fine. You're totally fine. And he also chose not to take Tylenol, which may have brought down his fever, but that he was like I was monitoring that. So. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting thing too about your parents, because my mom, I asked her, I was like, did you have symptoms? And she after her second shot, she got pretty sick. Like there was definitely like she had symptoms, not as bad as I did, but she had them. And they say that older people tend to not have as many symptoms because their immune system just isn't as strong, so it's not going to be as actively like attacking. But it also makes me wonder about genetics. Because like my mom seems to have had a stronger.
Just kidding.
No, we have a really strong immune system.
Oh, I mean, yes, opposite.
That's what it is. Is that because it's
us Andersons were just
yeah, you're weaklings. No, just kidding. It's not that. It's not even weak. It's like just the way your body reacts. So, and they say too, by the way, if you don't have any reaction, it doesn't mean it's not working. It doesn't mean your immune system is bad. It's just like affecting people differently. The same way that COVID has affected people differently.
Right.
So that's my point, is that like, but across family lines, COVID seems to affect people kind of similarly because they're thinking there's some genetic issue, something. Like, how whole families just get wiped out by COVID? Yeah. You see that. How come that happens to that family, but not this family over here that also all got COVID? So there's definitely something. Blood type, or they say, or something. Who knows?
Oh, when they called my name, I went in there and I was like, I think I'm going to cry. And the nurse was like, don't cry. She was so nice, but it's just a miracle. It's really, I do feel like we're on the other side of this, or we're starting to, but we all still have to be very careful. We have to, be responsible, wear our masks. But girl, after 2 weeks after mid-April, this girl is going to a dive bar. I'm going to a dive bar. I'm going to bring my own bar nuts.
Yeah, I was going to say, so there's still some, maybe if it's April, maybe we can also be at a dive bar that has a little outdoor seating area or something. But.
No, girl.
No, just going to start licking the floors.
Licking the floors.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to be good. But I am because I moved to Nashville and like people keep asking me, what do I think of the place? And I'm like, I have no idea. Yeah. And I live in East Nashville and it's super fun. I can walk to all these bars, but I haven't been going. So I'm ready, and I know everybody else is. Let's all giddy up, but go get your vaccine.
Just be careful, because there's still a chance you could potentially get COVID. It won't be as bad with your vaccine, so you won't die, which is great.
That's why I bring my own beer nuts.
Yes, bring your own beer nuts.
Bring your own nuts, plan. You guys. From now on,
hold on to your nuts.
Did you know the Golden Corral is open?
That's like the worst idea I've ever.
I was like,
I would not.
Because that's
go
been my
there.
biggest. This shows my white privilege. My biggest fear this whole time has been, will buffets be ended?
Reopen.
Yeah. Is it the end of buffets?
That would be
no.
very sad.
I think that it's.
But
I think
yeah.
they're thriving still.
Great.
I love a buffet. They
Oh my
have to
God.
come back.
I love a buffet too.
Oh God. Anyway, that's.
The choices. You get so many choices.
Just love a buffet, especially when they have the shrimp cocktail and the omelet station. I mean, what?
I love a good buffet that's just full of like South Dakota salads, where you're just like, I don't know what's in this, but I want it. Like it's potato. It looks like a potato and some mayonnaise, and then like a strawberry. Great, want it.
The last
Jell-O?
buffet I went to was in Atlantic City, and it was such a great buffet. But they also had like a soda fountain for wine.
Oh,
It's like, just when I thought this couldn't get better.
that's the most. That whole scenario is the most American
I know.
dining experience thing. I'm like, this is where for better or worse, I'm a little proud of that. I'm like, come on over, fancy Europeans, come and see how we dine. It is similar
dining in Europe. When I finally went to Europe for the first time, and we were in the south of France together, like it's just so civilized. They have like specific dining hours that you're then allowed to just calmly eat your food.
Yeah, they don't try to
at
rush you
smaller
out.
portions, but they space it out, and
more courses. Yeah, that's
it's
such an interesting thing about
lovely.
those small restaurants. Like they only have like one, maybe two seatings.
Yeah. But in
So it's
America,
like,
we're
they
just
don't
like,
care.
here's a trough and get out of here.
Yep. Yeah. Run. Go. Also, they pay their waiters. In the United States, we don't pay our waiters. So that's why they're always trying to kick us out.
Yes, I see. Well,
Anyway.
very, very exciting. We got an email.
I was excited to receive this email.
I was as well.
It was perfect. Exactly the kind of email we want to receive. There was a request in this email, and there's a portion of it that tells me that I'm doing something wrong, which I love.
Oh, Katie loves it.
I love being told that I'm wrong. So we got an email from my friend David, and he writes, "Hi, whores. I have loved listening to your podcast since the first episode and was inspired to email you after listening to the most recent Sacagawea episode. If only we could reform the nation's educational system with an army of whores to educate our youths as well as you do." I mean, we should be in the public schools. Just starting in kindergarten, bring the whores in. Then he says two things. One, request for a future episode, the current surge in anti-Asian violence, taking a deep dive into the history of anti-Asian racism and discrimination in the U.S. And number two, I'm still going to say it wrong. The way I would say it is posthumously is pronounced posthumous, but it's super cute when Katie says posthumous, which is, it's one of those words. Did you know that was posthumous? I mean, I'm not a young spring chicken, and I definitely.
How are you saying it?
Posthumous, because that's how it's spelled.
And it's posthumous?
Posthumous. And you know what's funny? I've heard the word posthumous. I didn't know it was the same word.
That's not really in my wheelhouse of vocabulary words. So whenever you say it, I think you're saying like platypus. So I'm like, cool.
Yeah. It's a reading word. You know, like those words that you read and then you think you know how to say it, and then you never say it out loud, or you say it out loud and people are like, what are they? Or in this case, they write you a letter and tell you you're wrong, which I love.
Well, so about that email, we did receive that email a couple weeks ago, and obviously the rise of this anti-Asian, just across the world that's happening, but specifically we're going to get into here in America. We got that email, and I did start Googling just right then and there the amount of hate crimes that have happened this year is just so sad.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And this is not a big deal. I'm like patting ourselves on the back about this, but we're putting a pause on our Women's Month episodes, and we will finish that next month, because we really did. And I only mention that to say that like we do take this very seriously, and it is something that we want to talk about.
But first, I think that we should before we get into this
not
horrific tragedy,
we're just going to talk about.
But first, let's get to our sponsor.
Free stuff is awesome, but free stuff to spice up your bedroom is even better.
Select almost any one item for 50% off, and then Adam and Eve loads on the free stuff.
Enter offer code HORIO at checkout and get 10 tantalizing free gifts.
A sexy item for him, a special gift for her, and a third item you'll both enjoy.
And 6 free spicy movies.
Ooh. Plus, free shipping.
That's HORIO, WHOREO, HORIO at adamandeve.com.
That's one thing. It's on my list this week to buy a new vibrator. So send me an email, difficultwomenpodcast@gmail.com.
You know where to go.
Remind me.
You should also use our code.
I will. I haven't actually used it yet. And Katie has, and you got all these treats and...
Yeah, I used it, and then I ordered the wrong dildo. I went the cheap route, and I got this tiny little dick. And I was like, man, I don't really use it. That was my fault, though. That's not the website. That's me being a cheap bastard and then picking.
Well, see, the thing is, vibrators can get really expensive.
Mine doesn't even vibrate.
Oh, you just got a dildo.
Small dick.
You got a dildo. Oh,
because I was trying to be
just use a
save some money.
cork.
Well, or a banana.
Gross. I don't know.
That sounds not hygienic. Don't do it.
Cut to our next sponsor, the banana.
Yeah, oh my God. Chiquita banana.
Okay.
Oh my God.
All right, let's bring it in. Reel it in, Katie.
Right. Sorry.
All right, let's get into this.
Right. So if you have been living under a rock, as we like to say, you may or may not know, you should know, you better know, that there was a horrific crime that happened in Atlanta, which was the shooting of, I think now 8 people have died in a few spas across Atlanta that was perpetrated by a Weasley little white dude. And it seemed it was clearly directed at Asian women. It's such a sad. I mean, this guy just kind of walked in to some spa to a spa that he had frequented. I found out later, so he knew what he was doing. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm gonna just pull over at the spa and start shooting people. I guess just shot a bunch of people there, and then he left, went to another spa, and then shot a bunch of people there. One of the issues, aside from the fact that there's the like crossover of problems with this story in terms of American problems is multifold, right? It's an intersection of misogyny, racism, gun violence and the lack of gun control laws that we have, and religion, and the problem that we have with this like very fundamental religious beliefs that we have in the United States, which are they're not okay. Right. Sorry. I mean, we try not to say, I'm not saying Christianity as a whole is a problem necessarily, although we can talk about that. But this like fundamental sort of type of religion is also at play in this particular story. But because there's like different elements at play, it seems like the element that people want to downplay the most is the racist element.
Even Joe Biden just the other day said that they're not going to be jumping to conclusions by calling this a hate crime towards Asians, that they're waiting to find out more information.
And I think one of the reasons, I don't know for sure, but is one of the reasons that they really hesitate to call it a hate crime. I mean, I'm sure some of it is like psychological, that we're trying to say that we don't have racism in America, right? That's part of it. But I think also like if you charge someone with a hate crime, that's even more, you get charged with higher, whatever that's called.
I mean, the thing that blows my mind with it is that they literally are like, well, this shit, whole motherfucker white or like whoever this.
He's a white supremacist. Yes. I would say, when his actions 100%, even if it's just even the misogyny part is white supremacy.
Right,
so yes.
Right, exactly. But they're taking him for his word of why he did it, and his motive he claims was not because of racism. It was because of his motive was sexual addiction, which, who also claims sexual addiction and like addiction to pornography and like very hardcore pornography was Ted Bundy.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack about this specific instance, but there's just so many hate crimes happening all over the world.
And they're attributing that, I'm guessing, to as Trump would say, China virus, or this trying to put it onto that, put scapegoating the virus onto China.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And specifically New York City. I mean, it's a huge,
oh my God.
huge.
Yeah. A woman was set on fire in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely happening here. I'm not going to pretend like we're, not
so
happening.
A friend posted this awesome thing on Facebook, and I really respect him and what he said. But then under it, a woman wrote, and the stance was, the media needs to really truly say what this crime was in Atlanta. It was a hate crime, because the media just, there's so many headlines about what happened in Atlanta, so many conflicting things, so many with the headline that it was a sex addiction, white supremacy. I mean, it's just the media is bad, I think. Anyway, my point is that my friend shared this thing that said, like, the media needs to just call it what it is, a hate crime. And, I started reading the comments on Facebook, and this one woman wrote, why all the hate? Like, has this been happening towards Asian Americans this whole time? And two things. So, like, first off, that post made me so angry, because it's just ignorance, really. But then talking to my friend about who this person was, and, like, very nice woman, just maybe not well educated in our country's history. Because yes, there is a lot of history in our country that's specifically racist towards Asian Americans.
And I would say, I think that her sentiment of being like, I didn't know there was so much racism against Asians, is probably a pretty common feeling amongst non-Asian people in America, because of the narrative that America, white America, has built around the quote unquote role of Asians in the American sort of system. Which leads us neatly into this notion of the model minority myth. Mm-hmm. So this idea of, like, the model minority, if you're not familiar with this term, and I know you know what it is, because
I've actually
it's that
never heard this term.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, this is perfect then. You know what it is, because if you've ever thought Asian people are good at math, that's the model minority myth. I see. Mm-hmm. If you've ever thought Asian people work harder than other minorities, that's why they're doing so well, that's the model minority myth. This idea that Asian people as a monolith, also, by the way, Asian countries span from the country of Georgia to Japan. You know what I mean? So, like, the diversity of what it means to be Asian is huge. Right. So that's another thing I think in America, a lot of times when people think Asian, they're like Chinese. It's like that thing when you call someone a Mexican, it's like you see someone Asian, you're like China person, China. Which is also, how are we not over that by now? But okay. Yeah, y'all work on that. Okay. But this model minority myth too is that, like, Chinese immigrants come to the United States, they work hard, they get their kids into good schools, they're the smartest, top of their class, all that, and then they succeed in America and they live the American dream. That's what, especially as white people, you see that and you're like, yeah, that sounds about right. That's what happens, right? The thing about that is, like, there's so many different levels as to why that's problematic. One of which is that, from what I read recently, I did not know this until this week. One of the reasons why there are a lot of successful Chinese immigrants is because the United States also cherry picks some of the smartest and brightest and best people from those Asian countries to bring them to the United States to then develop things and be scientists or whatever. So, of course, like, they're already an advantage because they're already genius people they would have been geniuses anywhere, they would have been successful anywhere. But that perpetuates this myth. So that's one thing. The other thing about it, there's lots of things about it, but the other thing about it is it's been a very, very, they found starting around the 60s, it's been a very successful device in pitting the Black community against the Asian community. Because what happens is, And this is why, like, I think racism against Asians is so insidious, because it's like much more quiet. You know, it's not necessarily the systemic racism is much more quiet, right? So, of course, if an old lady's walking down the street and someone, you know, sets her on fire, you're like, oh my God, racism. You know, so obvious. That's what's been happening, you know, that some of these hate crimes that we're seeing are just so clearly racist, right? That we're like, oh, that's Asian racism. But what's not more troubling, but also troubling, is that there's very clear systemic racism that happens within the Asian community. And like I said, they use like something like the model minority myth is racist because it also pits these two, you know, Black community and Asians against each other, like I just said. And what that in effect does is it gives a narrative to white people to say, hey, Black people, you're complaining about racism? Well, take a look at the Asian community. They're successful. They come here, they work hard, and they can be anything they want to be. Look at that kid went to Harvard. Look at this kid went to Princeton. You're complaining about racism. It's just that you're not working hard enough. Think of how damaging that is, right? That's totally discrediting. Number one, if you're bringing in, you know, if you're that's the allowing of these already overachieving Asian people into the community, into our United States, then of course that's going to be different. Also, that's totally disregarding like slavery and all of the things that went in with that. It also is totally disregarding all of the Asian immigrants that come here that are very poor and that are not living the American dream. It's like we just sort of absolutely negate those people. We don't look at those people. We don't use them in our narrative of look at, you know, how racism doesn't exist because look, this person from China came to America and succeeded. So that in itself is like the crux of a lot of like our, not only does it hold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's kind of the invisible line conversation that we had when we first started talking about Black Lives Matter this summer. It's just this invisible working within our communities that are systemic and happening, but like some people just completely choose to ignore them, but they exist and they are thriving today.
Right. And it's a confusing, the model minority thing is also confusing to white people because if you accuse an Asian person of being good at math, you think, well, that's not racist. Like that's a nice thing to say. You're good at math, right? But it's like it's troubling because it's perpetuating a bigger problem.
Mm.
Also, like it's also assuming that all Asian people are a monolith. Mm-hmm. So that like to say all Asian people are good at math is totally dehumanizing an individual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because then you're what if you're not going to, you know what I mean? Like why it's like if you're saying all women are good at cooking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you can't just say that. Like that's assuming then all women are all we're good for is cooking. All Asian people are good for is math. Like what, you know?
Mm-hmm. So
I think that it gets convoluted in our minds because we think like, but that's a positive trait.
But even, you know, just to piggyback on that exact thing, when Andrew Yang was running for president, they called him the numbers man. You know, they really, that was how they were marketing him. An Asian man that was good at math.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think he is pretty good at numbers.
Yeah. And I really want that universal income.
Yeah. But I mean, like,
but that's the narrative that we're comfortable with. Where, you know, we buy into it. We're like, yeah, we get that. That's the slogan. That's the advertisements that we have been. It's been part of the narrative for so long that, but I know, but yeah, I think you make a good point of how hurtful it is to other marginalized communities. To all, I mean.
Yeah. And I think that another thing that, because that's the thing that like, I don't really have a place to talk about. So I'm uncomfortable talking about it, but I just want to touch on it just so people can start looking into it a little bit more. But the relationship between the Asian and Black community has been very tense in the United States. Partly because of the model minority myth and the white United States pits them against each other. But on a side note, another thing that has happened, I know, since the Vietnam War, is that when Vietnamese refugees were coming to the United States, one of the places the United States was putting the refugees was into Black communities where the resources were already stretched thin. So it's like that's just a very clear way in which you're pitting two ethnic, minorities against each other, because like you're just choosing like, we're gonna just put everybody over here, and then we're not gonna worry about it. And then they didn't, have a lot of support necessarily once they got here and got like housed, So anyway, I think that a part of, I just bring that up because it's like, think twice if you're any person. You don't have to just be white, but if you're someone that isn't so sure there is so much racism against Asian people, think twice before you say that out loud, because there's just all this stuff that you don't necessarily see or weren't exposed to. Even if you're a young Asian person and just don't remember the Vietnam War. Not that I remember the Vietnam War, but not that old.
Oh God, I was like, Katie.
Yeah, I went back in the Vietnam War when I was, 27. No, but anyway, so you hear me kind of like dancing around this because it's not really my place to, I didn't study it. I'm not Asian or Black, so I don't really want to. Anyway.
Well, one point that I really want to talk about is just women specifically, and Asian women specifically, and the I can't say it.
Fetishization.
God damn it.
No, I can't say it. Fetishization.
Fetishize?
Posthumous.
Oh God. the Asian fetish. I'll just say that. So just looking into the history of the fetish of Asian women, we talk about relearning our history, and this is exactly. Of course, we thought immediately. I think of like World War II, like the basically the concentration camps that we had here on American soil for Japanese here. That's the first thing I thought of. But in history, but apparently there was this in 1875 here in America. There was the first federal immigration law, and it was directed at Asian females. In America, the Asian women that were coming in, they were assumed to be prostitutes and that they were lewd and up to no good. So they made the Page Act in 1875, and it was a immigration law, and it was specifically to ban Asian women coming into the country because they were up to lewd and immoral purposes. And the reasoning was because they were thought to be only coming into this country as prostitutes. And then just continuing on with viewing Asian women as lewd and immoral, humans. During the gold rush, that's, I think, where the racism also and the stereotype of kind of the comfort woman. So obviously, like we know in the gold rush, there were the saloons, like you see it in the movies. There's the whorehouses kind of things, because wherever there were men, there were going to be women, and that's how they survived. And so there was a very large population of Asian women who were sex workers during the gold rush, which I did not know. So then also, as we know, Korean War, Vietnam War, we know that the American men went over to these countries, and a lot of these women had no other means to survive. And so they, again, were the comfort woman. And so, but then there was so much violence against these women. But I don't know about you, but I've definitely heard of these, like the romanticization of, soldiers going over to Vietnam and falling in love.
Oh, that's what Miss Saigon is about. That's all it's about.
Yeah, right. But there's a kind of I was about to say an unspoken narrative, but it's actually quite it's in Miss Saigon.
It's spoken, but it's painted as it's romanticized.
Yes,
right.
But there was a lot of abuse happening during that time, and a lot of violence towards those women. But in the stories that were told in history, I think that it's more that they romanticize it. They were.
I do think in Miss Saigon she does get like slapped around by her husband, at least. So
Yeah, I think that
they
there's
show
some
that
violence, towards her.
I don't know. I don't remember how that show ends. But anyway,
like all women should be concerned. All men and women should be concerned about this narrative.
Right. And that plays into what we saw in Atlanta,
right?
Which is that, like, so if you're looking at that Atlanta horror show and say, well, but was it really racist? Like, was it? Yes, it was obviously against, sort of sex, obsession. Then yeah, sure, it's maybe misogynist, but was it really racist? The answer is it is racist whether he knows it or not.
Exactly.
Because this idea of the fetishization of Asian women is so deeply ingrained in our society that, like, that out of any kind of woman right out there, men tend to believe that Asian women are submissive. Right. They believe that they are sort of there to be your sex slave. I mean, there's so many men that view Asian women like that. My Asian women friends have all experienced it. We've all experienced sex. I mean, I've had a lot of sexism and objectification in lots of ways, but this is like at another level. Right. Where there's an assumption that you're going to be submissive and then just do, people, I mean, it's disgusting. It's disgusting the way people think of Asian women. I mean, it's upsetting. It's very upsetting. Yes. And I'm sure there's even more to unpack in that. But I want to just mention too that the reverse of that is this demasculating of Asian men that we also do in this country. It's almost been like acceptable to go around saying, like, I'm not attracted to Asian men. Right. Well, I'm attracted to everybody, but I'm not attracted to Asian men. And that's like a thing that is nonsense. Mm-hmm. It's like nonsense. I've had many a crush on the Asian
my number one crush right now, Mike Chen, Strictly Dumpling. I know I've talked about him before. He is the hot. Oh my God. I love him so much. He's so hot. He works out all the time. Right now he's not eating carbs and he's looking mighty fine. So Mike Chen, if you're listening, perfect. Mm-hmm.
And I just saw Minari, and Steven Yeun is.
Oh, I got to see that.
So dreamy. Right. I don't know if you ever watched The Walking Dead too. He was on that show too. He's so masculine in that movie too, because he's like the father that is like gonna, help his family. And it's just, and it really, really strikes you. I mean, it's on topic. If you have heard, he's the first Asian American to be nominated for an Oscar, which is crazy. For best actor, just for best actor. But like, that's a thing that we just like haven't really thought much. I mean, I don't think we talked about as much. We certainly talk about Black people not being nominated, but we don't talk about like Asian people not being nominated as much as we should. We absolutely should be talking about, like, well, why is this not even in our conversation or our pop culture conversation so much? Also, go see Minari. It's such a beautiful movie.
I gotta see it. I got the screener, girl.
Yes, but I'll tell you what, it makes me think about the depiction of Asian people in the media and in our our movies and television and stuff. So not just in like news media, but like in the things that we watch, and how much that plays into a part too of us saying like, well, I'm not attracted to Asian men. Part of what that is like when you see how many movies have you seen that star leading men, the leading man is an Asian man. I think that for a lot of people, Crazy Rich Asians was like a huge awakening for them, because they're like, holy fuck, these people are hot. And I think some people just didn't think about that. But if you're not being shown that depiction, that's why representation matters, right? Right. In addition to that, I want to remind everybody that up until one thing that I think about from time to time, it's very upsetting, is like movies that have been ruined by terrible Asian stereotypes. So like a movie like 16 Candles, which is like such a great coming of age teen movie, is ruined by this Long Duck Dong nonsense. This like, and like, you gave a job to that actor, so that part is good or whatever. But like, that stereotype was just so offensive, Another movie totally ruined to me by a terrible Asian stereotype. Breakfast at Tiffany's. Love that movie.
Oh,
Can't. It's so hard to watch those scenes with Mickey Rooney where he's a white dude, you know, dressed up as an Asian person, being just very Asian stereotypy, which has nothing to do with the plot. I read the book. It's in the book. So I get why they put it in the movie. They didn't just say like, oh, let's just throw in this character. It is legitimately in the book that she has a neighbor, but like they didn't have to take that route. They could have also, I mean, it's just, there's so many things like that. I bring all this up to say like, that's not an old thing. That used to happen and doesn't happen anymore. That show that was just not on that long ago, that Kimmy Schmidt show. I don't know if you ever watched that show. The first season, I was like loving it. And then I think it was in the second season, she got a boyfriend and her boyfriend was Asian, which was like, great. That's great. We don't see that a lot. But then they chose, Tina Fey specifically, chose to make this Asian person really stereotypically Asian. I think the actor, though, I'm quite sure is an American actor who then they have like doing this crazy accent and like they have him sort of in this weird bumbly like thing that just, I remember seeing it for the first time being like, whoa, this does not feel good. And it got a lot of pushback for good reason. But it's like that she thought in 2014, whenever that came out, it was still okay to do that. Like we're still fighting those, like that's what we see. Those are the characters we see on TV, right?
So our good friend Hari Kanabolo, he made a documentary, The Problem with a Poo from Simpsons,
yes,
which I highly recommend everybody seeing. Honestly, growing up, never thought
about it
of any problem with that.
Me too, for sure.
And then, you know, we talked about it. And it's fascinating that it's so glaringly obvious to him as an Indian man. And then all of a sudden your eyes are like, holy shit, that is the biggest stereotype. It is so detrimental for representation. Finally, you're like, oh, look, you know, this is like, you know, America's #1 cartoon that's been running forever and ever. But there's a huge problem with the stereotype of Apu. Huge.
Not to mention that he's played by a white guy.
Oh God, yes.
So you know what I mean? Like the levels of that too. I mean, it's, you can't even say, well, at least they gave one job to somebody. Like, not that that's a good enough reason, but I'm just saying, like, even that it isn't at play here.
Right.
I have a bunch of friends, a lot of actor friends that are Asian, and one person comes to mind in particular who my eyes were open to how much this is still going on, because just the amount of like roles like that they get submitted for where it's like, oh, you're going to play this immigrant who's just newly come here from China, or this immigrant newly come here from wherever. And those are like so frequently, those are the only real, like, especially the co-star roles that are like the smaller roles when you just want to come, like, how about just letting them come in and be like the waiter, you know what I mean? And like sometimes that happens, but there's one friend in particular who I sort of watched him just give up on the industry because he was getting only submitted for these characters that he had to have like a Chinese accent. He was like, I don't do a good Chinese accent. He's like, I feel like I'm offensive when, and he's Chinese, but he's not like, he's American. You know what I mean? Like he was born in China, but he like was raised in America. He's an American with a capital A. So this idea that he walks in and they're like, can you make it like more Chinese, or can you be like, be Chinese now? He's like, I can't do that accent, you know? And that's like, we still think that that's okay to sort of like push on people. And
well, I did a Zoom the other day for actors, and there was an Indian guy on the Zoom, and the person running the Zoom zeroed in on him and was like, talk for us. Say something.
Oh my God. Where was
and
this
Zoom
like, coming from? Was it from New York or LA?
It is here, a Nashville industry thing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I was like,
they're like, yeah. I think if that happened, I will say if that happened in New York where they're just like, talk for us, that would be not. We're at least
no, but it
at
was
the point
like,
in New
it
York
was an
that,
actor thing. So it was just like, can you speak, can you like, how ethnic can you sound, sort of thing. I mean, that would happen in New York
actually,
as well.
I was going to say, actually,
so
yeah, absolutely, that would happen.
But
yeah.
I do think, but it was
what is happening in New York, I want to say.
But yeah, but I just felt so bad for that actor
Well, it's interesting because it's like when it's a white woman. So like, you know how there was a lot of pushback in Ghost in the Shell when they cast Scarlett Johansson in a character as an Asian person.
Emma Stone also in the
Right.
Yes.
In the Hawaiian thing. Yeah. So it's like, but when that happens,
so stupid.
right. But when that happens to like a white person, and I do take back what I said about New York. I mean, clear that my whole point was that it is happening in New York.
Right.
So
right.
I'm my bad. The thing about when a white person is cast in an Asian role, right, in this particular case, right, or in any kind of role that's like not their ethnicity, then the argument is like, we're actors. We should be able to play anything. But if you're Asian, specifically right now, we're still breaking through these barriers, then the idea is like, well, you can't be the leading man because you're Asian. So how come that argument works one way, right, but not the other? Oh, well, you're Asian, so you're going to play the Chinese food delivery boy. Right?
Right.
Whereas like, well, you know, I'm white, so why can't I play Malcolm X? You know what I mean? It's like, because, and then, and you see it on, there's a lot of theater productions do that too, where they're like, we're going to do an all white version of Raisin in the Sun. And you're like, what is happening? Why are you doing that? Like, well, because we're actors and we can be anything. But like, God forbid you have like a multiracial casting of Macbeth. You know, like, well, there weren't any, you know, there weren't any Latino people in Macbeth. You know, like, well, Jesus Christ, like you cannot win with this stuff. And the point too is it's like if we only see Asian people on our screens as like the Chinese food delivery person, then white people don't think about it beyond that. You know, that's why these things, it matters like who gets cast and what.
I'm curious what legislation is going to be passed in the next little bit, because I do think that they are trying to introduce bills for this, you know,
I just wonder, like, what would it be?
I know.
You know, like one
but it
bill
is
that
on
they
a rise and it's terrifying. So like something has to happen. Well,
I mean, it's not in my mind, it's not a bill that has to be passed. It has to be an acknowledgement of what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So if the government's like, well, we're gonna pass a bill. It's like, don't pass a bill. Just say this was a hate crime.
Right.
That's what I have to do. Charge it as a hate crime. We don't need to. That's. I mean, maybe there's more. Somebody tell me if there's more that you know that what bill can be passed. But if it's not being followed, if people don't, you know, you can pass all the bills in the world, but if you keep saying, well, it's not a hate crime, it's not a hate crime, then it doesn't make a difference. So you have to call it what it is. The other thing is sort of side note to this. It's like adjacent to the conversation, but it's not unrelated. I just found out that the kid that shot those people in the spa, he bought that gun that day.
Right. That is
I just need people to really let that sink in, because it's become such a you know, gun culture is so ingrained in the United States now, which is not something I feel proud about at all. Unlike the buffets, I'm very proud of the buffets. Not proud of.
We're pro buffet.
Pro buffet. But like the notion that you could buy a gun the same day that you commit a mass murder, but you can't register to vote the same day as an election.
You're pro-life.
You know? Yeah, you're pro-life. You're a very religious pro-life person, but you also had a bad day. That's another thing too. The way that the police frame that, and then try to walk it back.
Yeah, I know, but the media is the one that shared it and headlines and all that sort of stuff as well.
But that was also the statement that they made.
Yes, I know.
So it's like even
and also,
the media
didn't one of the police officers or the sergeant or somebody was selling racist
he was selling
shirts?
like
cool.
I think China virus type
That's
shirts.
awesome.
So it's like, and then so that's another thing that could happen instead of like making more laws. The police department heads could fire that guy. Instead of apologizing for him. Yeah. And say, we're not going to actually this is actually terrifying that he said that. And then also he happens to be selling these shirts. So like, that's something we got to investigate this guy and get him out of the department, but they don't do that. So, I mean, there's so many things that can be done with this, what we have in place now, but you have to follow through on that stuff. And that's the same with a lot of things, right? So we have, you know, we got anti-rape laws or whatever, but if people aren't being prosecuted or they're not winning the, you know, then who cares? We have, you know, in theory, you're not allowed to step on a man's neck and kill him when you're a police officer. But unless you really prosecute and find them guilty in a real way, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Accountability.
Yeah. And just like follow through. It is lip service at a point. I think that the thing that would be scary is like, I don't know that I would feel that great if like they're like, okay, we're going to pass all these measures now, because then it's like it feels like something's being done when it's not.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's
for me. It takes more. It's just the Republicans that need to acknowledge that what Trump did by calling it the China virus and the Kung flu, whatever, all that stuff, like. The rise of white supremacy was because of the Republican Party. These hate crimes that are happening now are because of all the hate speech that has been touted around.
I would say yes.
Plus all of our history as well.
Right.
But
I would say it's been the flames have been fanned by Trump and conservative religion, like Christianity,
evangelicals and all that stuff.
Evangelicals and like Trump and like
it's all converging at the same.
The fans have been flamed very, very. Propane has been thrown on the fire, but the fire has been burning the whole time, and the fire has been burning through all of the administrations, and racism rears its head in all sorts of different ways. So again, like the racism that a black person walking down the street faces is going to be very different from the racism that an Asian person faces walking down the street. So we can't just say racism is also a monolith or something. It's different things. And I just want to mention sort of an anecdote that a very close friend of mine, someone that I'm close with, went through a very racist experience with our government during the Obama administration. During the Obama administration, Obama chose to target Chinese American citizens that were from China and investigate them in a very aggressive, horrendous way, and destroyed many people's businesses. Just destroyed them. And like that's not something that's no one's talked
Nobody
about
talks
that.
about that. Yeah.
The only reason I know is because my friend experienced it, and then we've talked about it. But like that's systemic racism too. It's not just like getting punched in the face on the street, Not that that's okay either, obviously, but like I say that just to say that was under the Obama administration. So like I also don't want to scapegoat our problems to the Republicans and to Trump specifically.
Well,
I think that what he has, but he absolutely, to speak to what you're saying, you're not wrong to say that he has absolutely fanned these flames and made them worse and brought xenophobia up in people that maybe weren't, it was more dormant, right? So now they're actively like,
and there's
shooting
platforms
people.
and
they're actively hurting people on the street, which is different than Obama's sort of we will quietly just destroy people. You know?
Well, that's why I was shocked that Biden said that let's not call this a hate crime until we have more information.
But are you shocked?
I mean, I was.
This is the thing I think that we have. No. And I mean, I know you were, and I understand. But I think that
really.
This is what we have to really realize is that like this idea that like Democrats are good and Republicans are bad. It's not. It's like they're all bad. They're all bad.
I know that actually is
who's worse. You know, and how do we? Do we have a better chance of getting through to Biden? Absolutely. Right. Do we have a better chance of fixing these things under a Biden administration? 100%. Right. But there's still
some bad stuff. Yeah.
Biden is the Obama administration. Right. Biden was complicit in whatever happened to my friend. Right. And we have an Asian American vice president, and I'm still worried. Right. You know, I love her in lots of ways, but I don't know. She's part of the system too. Right. But we're definitely in a better position with her there. But what is she going to do about it? What is she going to do about it?
Well, I hope everybody has enjoyed this episode.
Yeah.
Are you fired up as much as we are? Yeah. You should be fired up. You
should be fired up. And I think that like that, and we were remiss to not talk about this sooner.
Yes.
Shame on us.
Yes. And thank you to your friend who wrote us and then clearly we, pausing Women's History Month because we couldn't go.
This is women's history.
Well, yeah. Oh, well,
and that
most
too,
certainly.
right? I know that was my
Absolutely.
bad because I said that, but you're right. But this is women's history too.
Yeah.
So. We love you all, everybody. I know, check in with your Asian friends. I know this has been a really hard time for all of us as Americans and, everybody.
Yeah. And just, relearn your history, your American history. You didn't learn this stuff in school. I guarantee it.
We didn't even get into like the, just to sort of
Horrible.
rush through it, the amount of, Chinese immigrants and different Asian immigrants built this country.
Totally.
Also,
Yes.
we're part of building this country, and then we treated them like crap because that's what white supremacists do.
Yep. Cool. America.
Oh, so much more to talk about, but we'd be here all day.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll revisit.
Well, something fun to just, silver lining is when I went out to Cookeville, Trump County, to get my vaccine. There was a big store. It said Trump store. Guess what? It was closed.
Yeah.
It was closed. There was nothing in it. Just like empty. It was an empty building. But it literally called Trump store.
God, I'm so curious.
I know.
I mean, probably that's where they got all their MAGA hats.
One of my friends was like,
sounds like MAGA.
one of my friends said that we have to go to Sturgis this year. And I was like,
Why?
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Yeah, but we could talk. We could get in there, but we'll see. They have to pay us double. If you're listening, it's
they don't want us. They don't
Yeah,
want
I
us.
know.
I'm sure they won't have us back. It's fine.
All right, you guys, please tell a friend about our podcast. We're still out here. We're doing it. We love it.
Yeah.
We love you. We love you for listening.
Take care of each other. Be nice and stand up for when you see something going down. Be careful, but help people.
Yeah.
Especially right now, we have to all take care of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Hey there, guys. We have some exciting news. We're going to try something new this week. Isn't that right, Marie?
That's right. We're going to pop our Clubhouse cherries, you guys. I don't know if you've heard of this new social media app called Clubhouse. It's all audio based. I've heard it's like the radio, but better.
Just like podcasting.
Oh, there you go.
And what's great about Clubhouse is one of the things that people say to us all the time is they love to listen to our pod, but they always feel like they want to join in the conversation. Well, here is your chance.
So this Friday, March 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be continuing the conversation about Stop Asian Hate.
So please join us. We're especially interested in people and their experiences that they've had because, of course, we cannot speak to that. Anything else you'd like to join in and chime in? And if this goes well, we'll have more. So join us, please, this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.